Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passion World Talk Radio Network. Global Media Network LLC is a company, and one of its subsidiaries is Passion World Talk Radio Network. Educate, enlighten, entertain, mindfulness. And this episode is taken from Reuters, and the name of the article is, Does U.S. Law Allow Trump to Send Troops to Quell Protests? The article was written by Dietrich Knuth, Knauth, June 9th of this year. It was updated 20 hours ago. On June 9th, the current president deployed National Guard troops to California after days of protests by hundreds of demonstrators against immigration raids, saying that the protests interfered with federal law enforcement and framing them as possible, quote, form of rebellion against the authority of the U.S. government. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Monday mobilized 700 active duty Marines as part of the government's response to the protests. California sued that administration on Monday to end the, quote, unlawful, unquote, deployment of troops in Los Angeles County and return the state National Guard to California Governor Gavin Newsom's command. So what laws does the current president have to justify the deployment? He cited Title 10 of the U.S. Code, a federal law that outlines the role of the U.S. Armed Forces, and his January 7th orders to call members of the California National Guard into federal service. A provision of the Title 10, Section 12406, allows the president to deploy National Guard units into federal service if the U.S. is invaded. There is, quote, a rebellion or danger of rebellion, unquote, or the president is, quote, unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, unquote. What I want to comment is, why didn't the sitting president on January 6th incite this law to prevent Washington, D.C. from an open rebellion of people with machine guns, who unlawfully scaled and shot people because they were doing their job? My quote. An 1878 law, the Posse Comitatus Act, COMITAT Act, generally forbids the U.S. military, including the National Guard, from taking part in civilian law enforcement. Section 12406 does not override that prohibition, but it allows troops to protect federal agents who are carrying out law enforcement activity and to protect federal property. For example, the National Guard troops cannot arrest protesters, but they could protect U.S. immigration enforcement who are carrying out arrests. What does California's law say? Calvas, state with the Constitution's 10th Amendment, which protects states' rights. The states argued that the deployment does not meet any of the requirements in Title 10 because there was no, quote, rebellion, no, quote, invasion, and, quote, no situation that prevented the enforcement of U.S. laws in the state of California. The president did not consult with Newsom before deploying the National Guard, and violated Section 12406 requirement that orders to deploy the National Guard, quote, shall be issued through the governor of that state, unquote, according to the lawsuit. The lawsuit seeks a declaration from the court of the president's order is unlawful and an injunction blocking it from being enforced. There is little precedent for such a dispute. Section 12406 has only ever been involved and invoked once before to deploy the National Guard when President Richard Nixon called upon it to deliver the mail during the 1970 Postal Service strike, according to Bonta. 5 legal experts from both left and right leading advocacy organizations cast doubt on the president's use of Title X in response to the immigration protests and called it inflammatory and reckless, especially without Newsom's support. The protests in California do not rise to the level of, quote, rebellion and do not prevent the federal government from executing the laws of the United States, the experts said. Legal experts were split on whether a court would back Newsom's interpretation of the governor's role under Section 12406. Courts have traditionally given great weight to the word shall in interpreting other laws, which supports Newsom's position that governors must be involved in calling in the National Guard. But other experts say the laws were written to reflect the norms of how National Guard troops are typically deployed, rather than giving a governor the option to not comply with the president's decision to deploy troops. The president could take a more far-reaching step by invoking the Insurrection Act of 1792, which would allow troops to directly participate in civilian law enforcement, for which there is little recent precedent. Senior White House officials, including the vice president and senior White House aide, have used the term insurrection when discussing the protests, but the administration has stopped short of invoking the act thus far. It has been used by past presidents to deploy troops within the U.S. in response to crises like the 1794 Whiskey Rebellion and the rise of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, in the immediate aftermath of the American Civil War. The law was last invoked by President George H.W. Bush in 1992 when the governor of California military aid to suppress unrest in Los Angeles following the trial of Los Angeles police officers who beat Black motorist Rodney King. But the last time a president deployed the National Guard in a state without a request from that state's governor was in 1965, when President Lyndon Johnson sent troops to protect civil rights demonstrators in Montgomery, Alabama. The current president has more direct authority over the Marines than the National Guard under Title X and in his constitutional role as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, legal expert says. Comment, which leads one to believe that he only uses the Constitution when he feels that it can uphold his authoritarian views of what he wants to do when he wants to do it. It reminds me of Henry VIII when he was given permission to go and do whatever he wants, and so therefore is our sitting president. But unless the president invokes the Insurrection Act, the Marines are subject to legal restrictions that prevent them from taking part in, quote, any search, seizure, arrest, or any similar activity. The Defense Department said on Monday that the Marines were ready to support the National Guard's efforts to protect federal personnel and federal property in Los Angeles, emphasizing the relatively limited scope of their role at the moment. We want to thank you very much for joining Lest We Forget Historical on what the sitting president's role is and what he can and cannot do, and to use the Constitution when he thinks it will support him in whatever he wants. To go and read this article over again, please go over to Reuters, reuters.com/, and then the title, which will take you directly to the article. And the title is Explainer does US law allow the president, TRUMP, -2 send troops -2 quell protests by Dietrich Knauth. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. This program is sponsored by Ruby.ai. Check it out at aiwithlillian.com. It'll take you to a web page. You can see the testimonials for AI, which is called Ruby. And it will provide you with a demonstration of the software. And then please sign up for a monthly subscription. The sitting president has signed an executive offer for K through 18 for people in school to be taught, as well as continuing education for adults. It's not going to go away. It's just going to become more complicated. Do yourself a favor and start learning it now. And by Conscious Research Solutions, check us out at passionworldtalkradio.com/research made simple blog. And it will provide you with a 15-minute free consultation where you can sit down. It'll also show you all the pain points that are associated with doing research and why you're probably doing wrong or you really don't know how to do it, and find out how we at passionworldtalkradio.com and AI can help you attain that information you need. And if you want to hear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, please donate to our station, passionworldtalkradio.com/donation. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.